All right, thank you everyone for your patience. For the record, I'm Rebecca Wu, Public Affairs Officer for FBI St. Louis. Before we get to the prepared remarks, we do want to acknowledge all our partners who are here today. I'm not going to name everybody by name because you have the list of the names and their spellings, but I do want to acknowledge their agencies. So at the federal level, the components under the Department of Justice, we have the U.S. Attorney's Office, FBI St. Louis, and ATF. At the local level, we have a lot of representatives from the St. Louis Area Police Chiefs Association, to include Bridgeton Police, Creve Coeur Police, Florissant Police, Ladue Police, St. Louis County, and St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. And we also have a school district with us to give their perspective on how this is impacting students, as well as the authority that schools have in disciplining students. And so we do have 3 speakers. As I mentioned, Dr. Greg Wagner is with Parkway Schools. He'll be talking about that. Chief Timothy Fagan of Florissant Police, he is the chairman of the St. Louis Area Police Chiefs Association. So he'll talk about how police resources are being diverted, as well as how, as much as he can, how juveniles are being handled. But we're going to start with my boss, Special Agent in Charge, Ashley Johnson. She's going to talk at the federal level, the type of consequences people face at the federal level when they post hoax threats. Ma'am.
Good morning. Ashley Johnson, Special Agent in Charge of the St. Louis Field Office. We often see, after a tragic school shooting such as that occurred in Georgia on September 4th of this year, a spike in the number of hoax threats that we see across our nation. We saw a spike here in 2022 when we had our own tragic shooting at Central Visual and Performing Arts School. The community and law enforcement must work together to send a message that hoax threats will not be tolerated. And we must help our young people understand that there are consequences for his or her actions. Hoax threats are not a joke. Don't think you can hide. We will find you, and you will be held accountable. Let's talk about the legal consequences when you make a decision to engage in a hoax threat. At the federal level, you can be sentenced up to 5 years. Not a joke. If someone is injured, that sentence can go up to 20 years. Not a joke. And if death occurs, you could be facing a life sentence. Again, not a joke. For example, last year, a juvenile from another state called in a hoax threat to one of our local schools here in St. Louis. This hoax threat resulted in the evacuation of the school, the students, the faculty, and the staff. In response, there was a massive law enforcement response, taking a lot of our law enforcement officers from the important things that they do each and every day to attend to this threat. Within 15 days of that threat, the subject in another state had been identified and located, and federal and local law enforcement officers executed a search warrant on his home. As a parent, I want you to imagine federal and local law enforcement officers showing up at your home to execute a search warrant because your child made a hoax threat. The subject is a juvenile, so I can't go into specifics of that case. However, the juvenile court system is handling it. So what I ask of you, to parents, community leaders, teachers, faculty, to please talk to your children and help them understand the impact on our community and the consequences he or she could face. As a parent and community leader, I understand the fear that we have when we hear or see such a hoax or threat. Our instinct is to warn others and let them know what we've seen or what we've heard. However, it's very important that we do not spread misinformation. So I ask that your initial response be to contact law enforcement. Give us an opportunity to assess the situation and conduct a logical investigation. I want to thank my law enforcement partners that are here with us today to help educate and spread this message to our community. I want to thank the students, community leaders, faculty, principals, school resource officers, all who have been instrumental in helping to spread this message and reporting threats to law enforcement as appropriate. I want to turn it over to Chief Fagan of the Florissant Police Department, and I wanted to continue to thank the community and all of you for your time. Thank you.
Good morning. As they said, my name is Tim Fagan. I am the chief of the Florissant Police Department and also the chairman of the St. Louis Area Police Chiefs Association, representing the chiefs of police and command staff personnel that are standing to my side. Police departments all over the state of Missouri and the country are experiencing a dramatic increase in threats against our schools. Not only is this extremely frustrating, but it is a huge drain on resources to law enforcement agencies and school districts alike. Resources that clearly can and should be used elsewhere. In addition to the drain on resources, these threats are often traumatizing to students, families, and school staff, and they do have to stop. Now, typically when the public hears about a school threat, they don't often hear about the consequences of that threat because the person responsible is very often a juvenile offender. Information about student discipline is protected by law, as is information about minors in the juvenile court system. However, today, I want to give a snapshot of what a juvenile can expect if they choose to make a threat against a school. In the month of September alone, throughout St. Louis County, there have been 6 referrals to the juvenile court system for making a terroristic threat. I want to stress this is just in St. Louis County alone. The city of Florissant, where I am the police chief, has seen us refer 4 juveniles this school year for making a terroristic threat. Again, these continue to increase and they continue to be a serious violation. We also know that in these cases, juvenile authorities are always going to err on the side of caution when it comes to juveniles, and they're going to detain them in custody when threats are made. Now, what this means to the kids is that if you choose to make a school threat and you are taken into custody by law enforcement, you will not be going home at the end of the day. Making a school threat is a very serious violation of the law, and there are consequences that result from that threat. The consequences vary, but they can include things such as being placed under court supervision. This is very similar to probation or parole in the state court system. This often includes GPS monitoring of the juvenile. A juvenile can be removed from their home and placed into the full-time custody of the Missouri Division of Youth Services. And in certain circumstances, if the situation warrants it, a juvenile can be certified to stand trial as an adult in either the state or the federal court system. Again, these are very serious violations, and everyone should understand that law enforcement, the court system, and the school districts are treating them as such. So we want parents and caregivers to talk to their kids. We want them to explain the seriousness of a school threat and the seriousness of the consequences that result from that. But at the same time, we also need your help. If you hear or see a threat, we ask that you do not post or repost that to social media. That very often slows down law enforcement response by hours, and in some circumstances even longer. We would always encourage you to call 911 and report that to your local law enforcement agency. You can also report that to the Missouri School Safety Threat Reporting System, Courage to Report. This can be done online, or this can be done by calling 866-748-7047. You can even text this information to CTR to 738-477. You can file a police report, prevent a shooting from occurring, another act of violence, and in some circumstances even report bullying or threats that could lead to more serious situations if those situations aren't handled appropriately. In addition to the state reporting systems and 911, your individual district may also have a tip hotline or a reporting system. We encourage you to familiarize yourself with all of the resources that are available to you and use those to help keep our young people and our school staff safe. Now I'd like to introduce Greg Wagner, Coordinator of Student Discipline at Parkway School District, to talk about what typically happens with disciplining students found to have made a threat. Parkway has an excellent program to assess threats and to lead students and to try to head off student behavior that might lead to threats. Greg?
Thank you. My name is Greg Wagner. I'm the coordinator of student discipline for the Parkway School District. Obviously, student safety is our top priority. As was in the news yesterday, we just had a bomb threat at one of our elementary schools, and thankfully with the work of our security, local and federal law enforcement agencies, we were able to quickly determine that it was not a credible threat. while at the same time surround our students and staff with the supports they need to very simply make it through the day. That includes a lot of mental health supports and other counseling supports that allow us to carry on school as normally as we can while law enforcement comes in and does their job to quickly and thoroughly assess the threat. And like I said yesterday, thankfully, there was none. And that is an external threat. But the question is, what happens when the threats come from the inside? What happens when students make threats? Obviously, we take any threat seriously until we determine that it is not a credible threat. We have had students make threats this year. In every case, we have been able to determine that it is not a credible threat. However, when students make threats, with that comes discipline and consequences. Every student who has made a threat so far this year has received in some way a long-term suspension. That's not to say that's the only thing we do with a student when they are disciplined. Of course, they are disciplined, but at the same time, we also work to assess and work with the student and mental health supports and systems we have in place to make sure that, number one, we can prevent violence, and number two, to determine if a student is on a pathway to violence, how do we off-ramp them? What more supports do they need? What more supports does the school need? What supports does the family need to make sure that this student, if they are indeed off a path, does get off that path as quickly as possible? This is a multidisciplinary approach that we have with administrators, counselors, mental health specialists, and other law enforcement agencies to work with and assess the student and give them the support that they need. Again, while we have had threats this year, no threat has ever been credible. The threats do result in discipline because we in Parkway have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to internal threats made by our students. And much like we've heard already, when it comes to parental and community support, what we are asking is the same message you've heard today. We ask that if a student or a family or a community member is made aware of a threat, please do not repost it. Please screenshot it. Call your local school district's security line. Call your local law enforcement. Call an administrator. Email them any pertinent information you have, because as been said before, reposting of social media threats only bogs down the process as we are trying to assess the threat and make sure our students, staff, and community are safe. We are fully committed that our schools are safe for students and our staff and community, and we are very thankful for the partnerships we have with local and federal law enforcement to make sure that our students, staff, and community remain safe. Thank you.
Before you ask your questions, please identify yourself and your organization, and if you can, direct your question to who you would like to answer it, and if they can answer it, please allow them time to come up to the microphone.
Hi, Shoshana with Channel 4. Chief Fagan, you mentioned some of the numbers of juveniles that have been referred to the juvenile system, but do you have any numbers on how many hoaxes have been called into schools across the metro area?
I don't have the entire metro area, no. I know in St. Louis County, there's been 6 referrals in the month of September. And again, for our department alone, there's been 4 referrals just this school year. So the entire region, I don't have that information.
But outside of just referrals, do you know how many hoax calls might have been made or threats against schools?
I don't, but they are ongoing. There's currently a law enforcement agency that's dealing with one as we speak. So these are prevalent and they're happening more and more.
Chief Fagan, Brian Munoz, St. Louis Public Radio. Similarly, do you have any kind of estimates on how much in resources has been diverted, to investigate these threats versus other things, when you take into account overtime pay and things of that nature?
Sure. I don't have the specific figures, but it's a tremendous amount. Obviously, these are a huge priority for every law enforcement agency in every school district. You never want to assume that something is a hoax. You want to prove that it is not a hoax, and you want to find the person responsible. So there's a significant amount of law enforcement and school resources that are put into these threats as soon as we're notified about them. So it has been substantial, and obviously those are resources that can be used and should be used elsewhere.
Chief Fagan, and perhaps maybe Dr. Wagner can weigh in on this too, but you both said that you recommend parents not share the threats on social media, but obviously if they think it's legitimate, they want to share it with other parents within the district too. Beyond just calling law enforcement, how would you recommend they handle what they perceive to be a real threat if they want to make sure other parents are aware too?
Yeah, I think sharing on social media becomes an out-of-control thing, and it's hard for us to wade through that, and it takes certainly extra time. I would say that most, if not all, school districts are going to disseminate that information, and that's certainly a better platform than just everyone reposting on social media and getting that information out there. It really dilutes the investigation, and it just takes a lot of time to wade through that. So between law enforcement making notifications where we see appropriate in school districts, I think that's a much better avenue.
Special Agent Johnson, you both kind of mentioned the manpower hours that go into investigating each and every threat. I'm asking you both this question from a state, local, and a federal level, but is there any mechanism for departments to try and seek restitution from these individuals once they are convicted, for, the thousands of dollars of man hours that go into investigating these claims?
Yeah, there's no mechanism that I'm aware of at the state level. I mean, that is why we are here, is to assist the public and the community and investigate these incidents. But again, I think the key point or the talking point to that is these are resources that should be used elsewhere. And so it is really becoming a drain on all of us.
I can answer. Sailor Fleming, United States Attorney, Eastern District of Missouri. At the federal level, depending on the type of statute charged, certain statutes provide for a mechanism to seek reimbursement. So if there is a medical, fire, or law enforcement response, that can be part of the judgment itself, and there can also be civil actions as well.
Special Agent in Charge Ashley Johnson, for the FBI to get involved, the theme here, hoax threat, it's not a joke. Can you talk about the seriousness for the FBI to get involved in these threats and let kids know this is serious?
The seriousness of it is for all law enforcement. And when we receive those threats, most times people think of the special agent or the police officer who responds to this. But in addition to that, you have a team of analysts and other professionals who are also working to mitigate these threats. So the seriousness is not only the safety of our schools, the panic that could cause a school or families, as you talked about, when a parent learns of this type of incident, and fear instilled in them, and the disruption to the community and daily response or daily life, but to a federal law enforcement agency, as I would believe our local and state partners as well, we have to expend the needed amount of resources. And as I stated earlier, that sometimes can detract from issues or incidents that are pressing and need us as well.
Lucretia Wimbley from St. Louis Public Radio, Special Agent Johnson, is there any indication that you guys have found that any of these threats can be coming from overseas?
There have been cases, not necessarily, I can't say here in St. Louis, I'm not as familiar with that, but across the country, from a federal level, we have seen nexuses to overseas actors or threat actors who have been involved in these host threats.
Chief Fagan, Michael Reddick with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. What do you know about why these students are making these threats?
Not a tremendous amount. I think that when something is in the news, it certainly generates some attention by young people, and I think very often they are looking for attention in some circumstances. But obviously each case is evaluated on an individual basis, and I think the circumstances are different for each individual case. But again, they're coming in a fast and furious pace this year like we haven't seen before.
Chief Fagan, some parents may hear not a credible threat and wonder how you got there. Can you explain that to parents at home that may wonder what goes into determining if the threat is credible or not?
Sure. We spend a good deal of time trying to identify the person responsible for that threat. And I guess one thing that I would like to stress is we will identify who is responsible. I think often young people have the assumption that they can create a fake account in some way that will shield them. It will not. So once that person is identified, we dive into a full investigation, not only conversations with the young person, certainly their family, their extended family. This very often leads to searches of their home with the cooperation of parents to identify if things are readily available to them. And so it is a deep dive into the individual as well as their individual living circumstances to determine that there is not a credible threat and that there's not the resources for a credible threat.
Chief Fagan, can you talk in terms of parents can be charged as well?
Certainly that's something that has been a conversation, and it's something that we'll continue to look at. I think each circumstance would have to be looked at individually. I think that there are different situations for every juvenile and different home situations for every juvenile. So I think that is on the table for discussion, but I think it would have to be evaluated for each circumstance.
Chief Fagan, can you talk about the reaction you get from these students when you guys arrive to make an arrest, or the reaction from the parents as well?
Yeah, shock and surprise in most circumstances. I do think that there's this feeling among these young people that somehow they can shield what their identity is, and I want to be clear they cannot. I mean, we will get to the bottom of who is responsible for these things, and so I think very often they're surprised that they've been identified. And again, depending on the circumstances, you know, we generally see good cooperation from the families because, again, they're also surprised and in shock about when this occurs.
Are they remorseful? Are they in denial that it was them? Think they can just keep denying it or something?
I think you see it across the board. It depends. I think there's times when they certainly regret what they've done the moment that somebody knocks on their door, but then there's other times when they're going to deny it as long as they possibly can. So, again, each case is a little different, as is each threat.
Chief, Greg Blair, Spectrum News. Part of the manpower also extends not from just investigating the hoax, but the added security that a district may request. Have you seen kind of long-term recommendations on added security that also becomes a strain on your department?
Well, I'll point out that, you know, there's one here with us today, but all of these school districts have security professionals that are continually working with their local agencies to assess security for individual campuses. When a threat comes in, we do increase in the city of Florissant our presence in those school campuses until we're able to mitigate that threat and make sure that we've figured out who is there. So certainly there are some short-term increases in manpower, even outside of the investigation, that require us to make sure that the campus is secure. But again, that's just an ongoing conversation with school districts and law enforcement.
Chief Fagan, a sheriff in Florida has started identifying juveniles that are making these threats. What's your reaction to that?
It's interesting, something that we can't do here in the state of Missouri. Juveniles are protected by law. Again, school discipline and juvenile arrest are protected, and so I don't think you'll see a situation like that here in the state of Missouri anytime soon.
Dr. Wagner, I have a question for you. My wife's actually a teacher across the river. Her district sent out an email earlier this week that said, we haven't got a threat here yet, but based on it going around, more than likely we will. How do you prepare your students and staff to take all of these threats seriously?
So when it comes to actually responding to a threat that has come in, we have done drills and practices with students of all levels. Our students and our staff are familiar with kind of a color coding alert system that we have in Parkway. If everything's going fine, we have a code green. If something's going on, it goes yellow, orange, and to red, which is finally like intruder in the building level. So our students and staff are aware of the color coding system, and we communicate very openly with our communities that are affected at the time. During the time, actually, we are very transparent with the Barrett's community at the time of the threat yesterday. Here's where we are, here's what we're doing, and here's what's all clear. Our superintendent's action team and our communications department work to craft messages to the community to let them know, here's what's happened today, here's how we responded, here's what you can expect from us moving forward, here's some supports we're going to put in place for your students and staff. And we circle back to the message of our goal ultimately is to keep students safe. And again, please partner with us. If you hear something, say something, and let us know.
Dr. Wagner, we're coming up on 2 years since CBPA. With all of this also coming up, can you talk about maybe the trauma that can have on staff or students in the metro area, knowing just 2 years ago we did have an intruder in school?
Yes, and looking even at yesterday, you know, we see, I was at the building, and we see in real time students and staff very upset. We have thankfully increased our mental health support throughout the district. We have more mental health specialists on staff now than we have 2 years ago. We're increasing our counseling and school psychology support. And part of our response is to keep a close eye on our kids, keep a close eye on our staff, keep a close eye on our community. If we recognize that more support is needed in the building, thankfully we have more resources to devote as necessary. So we are very aware of the history of the violence here in St. Louis, and we all, you know, we keep keenly aware as best we can when students are feeling anxious, overwhelmed, stressed out with what they see in the news, what they're hearing from friends, and devote resources as we can.
Special Agent, would you be able to identify the differences between when a charge could come from a county or state level versus a federal level?
I think the U.S. Attorney may be better positioned, but for us to investigate, we have, there has to be a federal nexus, or in some cases where we assist our local or state law enforcement partners, but the charging I'll defer to our U.S. Attorney.
I'm happy to talk about that in kind of generalities. There are a handful of federal statutes that can be used in the school threat context. I will tell you they're more complicated to prosecute than they appear at first blush when you read them. Just to give you a little bit of a flavor of what there is, there's the one that's probably most commonly referred to, which is the 875 charge, which is essentially communicating a threat through interstate commerce. Of course, that means just simply if you're using your phone or your computer, if you're posting it on social media, that would be interstate commerce. There is a hoax statute, I believe that's 1038, that can be used if you are disseminating false information about an activity that is either occurring, about to occur in the future, and it is reasonable to believe that information, and that would fit in the school threat context. There is also a stalking statute that in some instances may be appropriate. And then, of course, if there are actual firearms or any type of explosives devices that are used, there are a multitude of statutes that would be applicable in those cases as well. Now, and let me just, one more thing, let me just add, some of those statutes apply to juveniles, some do not, and some apply to juveniles only in certain circumstances.
Attorney Fleming, Brian Munoz, St. Louis Public Radio. Have you seen it this bad before during your time in this office? You know, seeing this level of hoax threats?
So what I can speak to is the last 4 years since I've been U.S. Attorney, and I would say in talking with my staff and with the folks at FBI as well as local law enforcement, I think we are seeing a very, very significant increase. I don't want to say it's the worst we've seen, but I would certainly put it close to the top, if not the top, yes.
Can you just elaborate on when your office would get involved versus more at a local level when it comes to some of those charges?
So I want to be careful about not speaking in specifics in that regard. What I will tell you is that my office, myself, would certainly entertain and strongly consider prosecuting these cases at the federal level. If there is an applicable statute, of course, we feel that there's sufficient evidence to prosecute that case, and if there's a federal interest in doing so. And I say that with respect to both adults and juveniles. However, I will say that if we were to do so, we would be working in very, very close coordination with the local police department as well as the local prosecutor.
Special Agent Johnson, the question was asked to Chief Fagan, but maybe from a federal level, you could provide some numbers potentially or context of just how many cases you guys have investigated in the region this school year?
I can't speak to the number here, specifically here in St. Louis. As the U.S. Attorney stated, just in the time that I've been here over this week, we've seen a significant number, and we've seen one as we kind of stand here today. So understanding the significance of it, that it's reoccurring, it's not an issue we've been able to mitigate or thwart at this time, and we're seeing on a national level as well. So while I can't speak to specific numbers, I can say that the uptick is alarming, and it has caused us to gather here today to make sure we're educating the public and parents and students alike so that they understand the consequences and understands the seriousness that law enforcement takes this matter.
Do you have a general increase? Are we talking about double, triple compared to maybe last year?
Again, I don't want to speak to specific numbers because this is, unfortunately, we're seeing here and we're speaking about St. Louis specifically, and so we've seen a significant number. For me, 7, within a week is a significant number. And nationally, you're seeing an increase as well. So I don't want to box it in to say because of these numbers, we're more impactful or we see more of an impact. I would say just in general, following the school shooting in Georgia, we've seen a significant spike as well. So those type of incidents, if you go back and you kind of trace from there, as I mentioned, the school shooting here in October, we saw an increase and a spike in the number of reportings or hoax threats that we saw.
I may jump in too. I think it's fair to say that we have seen dozens just in the St. Louis area alone. We will, if to the extent that we can, immediately after this, we'll try to provide maybe some more specific data points for you that you can use. What I would impress upon everyone is that I'm not sure we've ever done a press conference quite like this as it relates to school threats. We have a lot of representatives here from across the board. So I think that that's very indicative of what we're seeing and how alarming that is here in the area, but again, across the Eastern District of Missouri.
Just to clarify, when you say dozens, do you
Yes.
All right, any more questions?
I have a few more questions for Chief Megan. Are these threats, are they coming from students who are sending it to their own schools, or are these strangers to the districts who are just sending them?
It's been a little bit of a mix. Very often it is students that are in the school where the threat is. We have had a circumstance with an out-of-state threat that came across, so it's a little bit of a mix.
Are they typically minors?
They're typically juveniles. In the cases we've been investigating this year, they've been juvenile offenders, yes.
High schoolers, middle schoolers?
Again, a little bit of a mix, yeah.
So Chief Mark for Channel 5 is saying it was a joke, a mitigating factor.
No, it's really not. I mean, again, just looking at the seriousness, the trauma this is causing to students, the public, families, staff, and the resources, it's not a joke at all. I mean, get straight to the point, it's anything but a joke. It's a serious matter, and if anything, I think today this should impress upon people how serious this is. This is a large group of folks from many different agencies that have gathered together to speak on this topic because it is serious and it is affecting every community here in the St. Louis region.
Should families expect any sort of increase in security at high school football games tonight, tomorrow?
I think that's individual football games and districts' decisions, and I think those are two different things. I think it'll certainly depend on whether the current threat that's ongoing is mitigated or not, or whether they've gotten to the bottom of that. But I think in general you're going to see an increase in security anytime there's a school event, such as a football game.
Chief, obviously it's a case-by-case basis, but when you asked, one of these juveniles that you're arresting, what were you thinking? What did they say?
I don't want to get into too specifics, but oftentimes it's a joke, right? It was a joke, and that's what they think it is a joke, and they wanted the attention that comes from that. And again, they quickly learn it's anything but.